So in talking about Alien Romulus, I think we all can agree that we liked it, just in varying degrees.
Who was watching that and saying, oh, this is really working? And it would have been so easy to just chop that out.
Yeah.
Prometheus, if you've ever actually watched the deleted scenes, if they would have kept a solid extra 10 minutes worth of footage, that movie would have made a whole lot more sense.
So the point of Alien 3 is that she should have just killed herself in Alien. That's the point of Alien 3.
Well, normally this would be where we say, don't worry, this is a spoiler-free zone, but not the case.
Not today.
Not the case. We're going to have spoilers all over the place because we're going to talk about not only Alien Romulus, but the overall Alien franchise. I know this conversation has been going on a lot of people's social media feeds. I think this is what spurred this idea for this podcast. Yep. So welcome to it. She is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we're from madwolf.com and the Fright Club podcast in conjunction with Ginger Nuts of Horror.
That's right. So if you haven't, you should absolutely be checking out Ginger Nuts of Horror. They are just an amazing website that really celebrates horror in all of its forms. They have articles by and about horror writers. They have movie reviews, including ours, including Adam Barney's new review of the super cool Strange Darling movie. That's really super fun. And you can find them at gnofhorror.com. And I just really recommend that you check them out because they're awesome.
Yes, Jim and the crew, we appreciate all the support they've given to us.
We also, real quick, before we forget, we want to say happy birthday to D-Zac. D-Zac is 50.
The big 5-0.
That's right.
This is where you go and get the meme of Sally O'Malley.
That's right, exactly.
I'm 50.
You should be celebrating like Sally O'Malley today.
Kick.
Zach. Kick. And then the other thing we wanted to say, this is really cool. Somebody sent us the book, The Extreme Horror Sticker Book, which is, you might not think the coolest book ever, but it's clearly the coolest book ever. It's just pages and pages and pages of these really gorgeously illustrated stickers. It's illustrated by Andy Price, like anything you want. You want like goth and spooky, got it. You want like funny and weird, got it. You want Lovecraft in there. You want like, really sort of disturbing and bloody, yes. In sticker
Why
form,
not?
George. I know. So, I was thinking that, so often when you decorate for Halloween and then you got to take it down, but if I just put stickers on our walls everywhere, then they can just stay up forever.
Yeah, it says right there on the cover, 500 plus stickers to keep you up at night.
That's right.
So, perfect.
We loved it.
The Extreme Horror Sticker Book.
And I was really impressed by the variety of illustrating styles.
Okay.
There's even scarecrows. I'm looking at you, one of our guests today, who's going to be on again not too long from now when we're going to do the Scarecrows
That's
episode.
right. We welcome two special guests, both returning, so they're friends of the show.
Friends of Fright Club.
Sort of, again, this got inspired by conversations that we were having, and other people too, about the new Alien Romulus and where it fits in the Alien universe. So, first of all, let's welcome filmmaker and friend and the guy you want to know when you need a good burger in Chicago.
Yeah, you ain't
Timothy
lying.
Troy, welcome in.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me again.
What's the name of that place you took us to?
Kuma's Corner.
Yes.
So good.
It's so
All heavy
good.
metal, all burgers.
Yeah, very
It was.
metal, yeah.
That's right. And our other guests would appreciate that.
That's right.
The Schlocketeer. You hear him every week on our other podcast, The Screening Room. Also does some reviews for us at madwolf.com. Daniel Baldwin, welcome.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, you would like this burger place because it's all metal.
Sounds good to me.
And the burgers are fantastic.
They are fantastic.
So we'll get there again sometime. All right, so we're talking Alien Romulus, and we were all talking about this on our socials. And I think, well, one of the things I like about having both of these guys on there is because we can talk deep about movies. But even when we disagree, as we do sometimes,
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. Even when we disagree, I always respect it's well positioned in their opinions and can back it up. So that's good. And it seldom resorts in name calling.
Very rarely.
Yeah, so that's good too. So in talking about Alien Romulus, I think we all can agree that we liked it, just in varying degrees.
Yes, I thought it was a lot of fun. One of the reasons I liked director Fede Alvarez's version of The Evil Dead was that he did what Sam Raimi had already done in Evil Dead 2, which is just take existing ideas and revisit them in funny and weird new ways. And a lot of people really were angry about that when Evil Dead came out because they thought either that it wasn't funny enough, or also that it didn't do anything new. But I liked that because it was very much, for me, in keeping with the franchise. So I'm both pro and con that that's what he did with Romulus.
Mm-hmm.
He revisits, and he has respect, obviously, for all of the films in the franchise.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of homages in there,
and not so much the Predator.
No.
Poor
Crossovers,
choices.
yeah.
Yes, the Predator crossovers. But he does. I mean, you can see there's a lot of resurrection in this one. There's a lot of Prometheus in this one. There's a ton of, obviously, the first two, because those are the ones that everybody loves. And I'm pro and con about that. But on the whole, I thought it was super fun.
I did too. Tim, what's your overall, what they did right?
I've been saying that this movie is big, loud, and fun, and dumb. Like that's been my line pretty much from the beginning, from when I walked out of the theater. It's entertaining throughout. Like I don't have any point at which I'm bored in the movie. Like it doesn't slow down. It keeps you, invested in the characters. The acting is all really good. I don't think there's, especially the guy that plays the android. I forget his name.
David Johnson.
Yeah.
He's
very
fantastic.
good. Yeah.
And all the rest of the characters, they don't, they do everything they can with the roles, and I have no problem with any of the acting in it. I think the problem with the movie is just the script. But one thing I loved was that they focused on the facehuggers so much.
Yeah.
Because they've never really gotten their due except for the one scene in Aliens. And, now they are the real threat in pretty much the whole movie.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
That's true.
And they're just so incredibly creepy.
They are creepy.
It makes you respect, going all the way back, the creature design.
Oh, yeah.
The face huggers are just so creepy.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the full alien. All of it is just a genius. But, yeah, seeing those things, and there's so many of them in Romulus. They're everywhere, scurrying around, and then they look like spiders sometimes, and they're flying at you, trying to get in your face. They're so creepy. Yeah,
they are.
I love that as well. And Daniel, what do you think? What were your pros on Romulus?
Pretty much the same ones. The performances are great across the board, especially the ones where the performer was given a lot to work with. The production design is absolutely stellar from top to bottom. Everything looks great. With one exception that we'll get to later, even the digital work all looks great.
Yeah.
I absolutely, like Timothy said, love that they focused on the facehugger so much. I thought it was a really good way to play with the existing elements in the franchise without just leaning on the xenomorph itself nonstop, like some previous films have.
Mm-hmm.
And I like some of the new creature stuff and effects work that they added into the lore. And obviously the connections that you mentioned, there's a lot of Alien and Aliens, but there's some Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, Prometheus, Covenant.
Oh, yeah.
Like it just flows into all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've read a couple of interviews with Fede Alvarez since I saw it, and I thought it was interesting that he credits an outtake from Aliens that made its way into one of the director's cuts or whatever that featured children running through the corridors of the colony there. And he said that he remembers thinking, wow, if I ever get a chance to tell a story, I'm going to focus on those kids that grew up in this colony. And that's why they're 20-somethings this time, which I thought was fascinating. I've seen a few criticisms about that. Why do we care about 20-somethings here? But I think it's interesting that was his inspiration. I want to tell their story.
Yeah.
They've grown up. They haven't seen sunlight. That's part of their inspiration for going and hijacking this ship. They want to get off that mining colony. And I thought that was an interesting choice to make. And I agree with the performances. Thought they were all strong.
Yeah.
And I just loved that anti-gravity blood gag.
Yeah, that's the coolest. That's the coolest.
I thought it was so great. For me, it was like a way to take something. It hit me like, why hasn't people done this before? Why didn't you think about this?
And they set it up nicely with the anti-gravity situation, that it comes and goes and they first break into the ship and they're doing this for a reason. What are they going to do with it? And I thought, that was a good decision.
It was, and so cool. And I thought, when she was floating through there and having to go around it. Oh, here comes a great big cloud of this blood. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah,
Just
I
a
did
nice,
too.
fun, clever new bit of alien lore they found a way to do something with. And I agree. All the homages to all the different alien films. And I loved, how much I loved his Evil Dead. I still think it's the best of the franchise. And I know people will throw things at the computer when I hear that. But, I just love his take on it. And I thought he did a lot of the same things right here, just going back to the horror film beginnings of that first one, and then turning it into a race against the clock kind of adventure that
they do in the
Aliens
second one,
became, and then throwing in all that other stuff, of course, especially with Prometheus at the end there with the what do you call that guy?
So that's Resurrection for me, the guy at the end.
The hybrid.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
hybrid. Well, now see,
Yeah.
that's interesting because in this interview I read, he said that is definitely a nod to Prometheus.
Okay.
On his part.
Okay. Well, it looks. I mean, it's so reminiscent of Resurrection.
Yeah, it is. But I think but he was explaining that
Yeah.
he meant it to be a fusion, a hybrid of the engineers because of the the black goo that is injected in there. So yeah, that one was when I remember when I wrote the review. When I first came home from seeing it, I thought that third act was going to be a make or break for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Was it silly? Is it silly there? It didn't certainly break it for me, but I can see where people went. What went over the line for me was that last callback when Andy says, "Get away from her, you bitch." I thought that was one line over.
Yeah, I agree because I don't think the rest of them were such clear fan service in that line because it didn't suit the character and it didn't suit the character arc. It's not as if part of the arc of this character was that he was going to turn into like some, quip quoting badass. He wasn't. He was forever going to be. And so it just felt so much like fan service to me, and it didn't suit the character at all. Really, I did not care for that at all.
I agree because I loved up until then what they had done with that character. I loved the power shift. Early on, he's viewed as expendable.
It was great,
He's
especially his line.
Yeah. He's the expendable one, and then all of a sudden he's not. You are.
That's right.
I love that. But
I can't believe you did that. What? Leave someone behind? That was great. That was a great line.
But
It was
I
a great
agree.
delivery.
I think that last bit of fan service was too much for me. What? How about you guys, Tim? What were some of the negatives? You talked about the screenplay.
Yeah, I mean, you start with that line. Like, I can't understand for the life of me how that got all the way through to being dropped into a movie. Like, they had to do test screenings for this.
Yeah.
I don't know about anybody else's screenings, but it got nothing but groans from the crowd that I was in. I groaned at it. Like, who was watching that and saying, "Oh, this is really working"? And it would have been so easy to just chop that out. And been done with it. And he didn't have to have a line there at all.
No.
So there's logic stuff in the movie that as you're watching it, you can kind of slide past, but then it's one of those things where you walk out and you're like, wait a minute, like the alien, the acid blood in the anti-gravity is kind of neat, but I think they try and get too much out of it, right? It stretches a little too far, and I think that's actually kind of where it starts getting silly, right?
Okay.
The stuff in the script that really bugs me is how much they change the lore without really being respectful of it. There's the idea that you guys mentioned about the ticking clock, but that actually is one of the biggest problems that I see with it, right? Like in the original Alien, you have Kane who gets impregnated, and it's a solid, it's at least hours, maybe days before the facehugger falls off and the thing pops out of his chest. And then it's a few more days before the thing grows and is chasing them around the Nostromo. Well, this entire movie takes place over 60 minutes, 90 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
Like the aliens have now had time to build a bunch of aliens because there's multiple xenomorphs running around, build a whole hive, right? Like they shrunk that time so fast. Like how would they have even gotten a chance to make the hive in 15 minutes?
Yeah.
I mean, it plays so fast with your credibility that you start to check out of it, and I think it cheats too much.
I agree with that, although I think this is not the first Alien movie to do that. That timeline, the gestation time has been sped up.
Oh, for sure.
I think before. But I agree.
And I think, they leave it a little bit open-ended as to what all was on that ship when they got there. Because there is there's a closet with like facehuggers on hangers, right? That clearly the science officer has put there. So it is, I think part of the collapse timeline is that something woke this up, but it's been there for a while. But then absolutely like how quickly, and the idea that science, that they've been screwing around with these monsters and trying to, you know what I mean? Like I don't think it's as big of a blight, but I do. Actually, we talked about this on our TV gig, and somebody immediately messaged us.
They did, boy.
And they were like, here's the issue. It's like, this is supposed to take place between 1 and 2, but, how does the company, how would they have known to go after the ship? How would they have known? He's like, because the company doesn't know that Ripley did this to the ship until they get her 25 years later, and she explains what happened. And so there is definitely, I mean, I think that he did something clever in situating it between 1 and 2, but at the same time, it immediately pokes holes in the timeline that you can't really fill in.
Well, yeah, this dawned on me too, right? There's the idea that they resurrect Ian Holm to be Rook, but he's the same model as Ash.
Yeah.
Right.
It dawned on me, I think, in conversations on social media later on, that retroactively makes everybody on the Nostromo either really unaware or really stupid.
That's exactly what
That
I
is-
said.
that is
That's
what he
we were
said.
talking. I said
Although,
the exact same thing.
They were kind of dregs, right? I mean, they weren't like the top Starfleet. They were just so it could be that they just,
But if it's common practice to have an android on every Weyland-Yutani ship,
Yeah.
then maybe that happened in the intervening 15 years or whatever, but it's still it's weird.
Yep.
Right.
I agree.
Cracks.
That occurred to me as well. Daniel, weigh in on this.
Cranking back a bit, the gestation period has been a problem ever since Alien versus Predator. So I kind of give this one a pass for it because, even in Covenant did the exact same thing. So did the second Alien versus Predator movie. So this is like the third or fourth time that they've kind of hand waved that over. My assumption was that the Hive had been there the entire time and that they just hadn't been in that part of the space station yet, but who knows?
Mm-hmm.
It feels like some stuff was cut out there.
That's fair.
As far as the plugging it into the timeline thing, it does mess with some things, especially with the having the synthetic on board, because even that was also carried over from Prometheus and Covenant as well. I'm fine with the Nostromo crew being unaware because they're basically just space truckers.
Mhm.
And I guess the company would have known to a degree what was going on due to sending them down to the planet to investigate the signal. And then I'm sure Ash was communicating with them. But it's a lot of stuff that you just have to assume in the background.
Yeah.
And that kind of takes me to a larger part of the thing with the Alien series is a lot of these movies have extended cuts. Alternate cuts. The Cameron one's a big one. There's, I think, an extra 30 minutes of footage in his extended cut. And then, of course, Alien 3 is almost a completely different movie if you watch the assembly cut of it. Prometheus, if you've ever actually watched the deleted scenes, if they would have kept a solid extra 10 minutes worth of footage, that movie would have made a whole lot more sense. So part of me wonders if this was... a bit too judiciously edited.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they cut out some exposition that they could have used.
We're going to see later, maybe.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Yeah.
Would the director's cut of Prometheus have fixed the characters that are irretrievably stupid?
A little bit.
Okay. I haven't
Not
seen
all of them. Not all of them. My big nitpick on that one is you can watch most of that deleted footage online, but even the sequence at the end when they wake up the engineer, the full cut of that scene actually has a conversation with him, with him speaking to David in the alien language, and they just cut out all of the big aliens dialogue.
Interesting. I'll have to because I like Prometheus better than a lot of people, but I haven't seen
You
that.
like it better than I do.
Yeah, definitely. So let's go back to the fan service in Romulus for a minute. I think you said what we both feel, that last line was too much. Up until then, was the fan service acceptable? I thought up until then it was. It was subtle enough, but yet fun until that last line.
Yeah, there were a lot of callback lines all throughout, but most of them felt organic. They didn't really draw attention to themselves. But that last one is super egregious for multiple reasons. The execution of it is terrible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's way too obvious. It doesn't fit the character or the scene, and it's such a specific callback that it's going to make it really, really weird for anyone who decides to watch these in chronological order now, because it's going to be a call forward to something that Ripley does in the next movie, which takes place, I don't know, like 35 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus so that it puts then Andy in Ripley position. You know what I mean? I mean, in no way does it match. It just doesn't. It doesn't fit at all. But for me, I think nobody so far has mentioned Ian Holm's face,
Right. Yeah.
which was so. And when they showed it like on the teleprompter,
That
right?
was fine.
Then it looked fine.
Yeah.
Then it looked grainy, and it looked okay. Well, he looks like he's worse for the wear and whatever. But like when they showed him just talking like this, head.
Yeah.
Good God, that
Yeah.
was terrible.
Yeah, and the rest of it looked so good, it just drew even more of a comparison to what happened here. It really stood out. It really stood out.
I think Hollywood does this a lot. They take the tech and they put it in before it's ready, and then they put it in too much, and they just don't get it right.
Yeah.
And I think that's where they are. They're so excited to do it that they just jump too far ahead and overuse it, and it doesn't sell. I mean, when they're on the TV screen, like you said, it looks fine, but the rest of the time, it just takes you out of the movie.
Yeah, it does.
And I think, even Ian Holm has one of those callbacks. He's not really Ian Holm. I don't know why we keep calling him that. Which is, that gets into a whole other moral discussion, which would probably be a podcast of its own. But he has one of those callback lines where he says, I won't lie to you, but I don't envy your chances or
Yeah,
whatever.
you have my sympathies. Yeah.
I think that's kind of like the borderline of where they start, wobbling, and then the get away from your bitch line completely crosses over. I feel like throughout the entire movie, they just kind of keep adding these callbacks over, and it's a thing kind of where how the movie gets sillier and sillier as it goes along too.
Yeah.
And by the time you're in the third act, you're like, all right, I see what this movie is. This movie's kind of dumb, and you go along with it because you can accept it because it's still fun. Like it's not like Van Helsing, which is just dumb and dumb. But it's still enjoyable to watch, right? And you still have enough to the characters that you're like, okay, I feel like this works. But I think in the end, this movie was just studio noted to death, right? It's like we've got to have Ash in there. We've got to have this line in there. We've got to have this in there. You got to touch on Prometheus. You got to do all of these things. And it loses the organic feel that it has in the beginning, right? Like the beginning's beautiful. It's got, real kind of, it really does hit your heart. Like you were talking about how these kids have never seen the sun before. Like, okay, I'm on their side, right? And it's got that really cool moment of Rain seeing the sun for the first time coming across her face. Like that's a beautiful moment. It works for the character. It hits in the feels. Okay, good. And then they start killing them off, and it gets sillier and sillier as it goes on as they start tossing the logic out the window to get the set pieces they want.
Yeah.
I do want to. I mean, I feel like I think Andy is probably the best character in the film. I really do like Kaylee Spaney. I think she's great. I think she's great in everything I've seen her in. I love her voice. She's got such a great voice. She sounds like a vulnerable kid, and it works really well in the 3 films that I've seen her in because that's a great.
And she looks like a vulnerable kid. She looks so young.
No matter what the character is trying to do, when she talks, you can't help but go, "Will somebody just put a blanket around her?" And I think that's great. One of the things though about Andy, about the character of Andy, and the fact that it's the only black actor in the entire film. He's the magical Negro. Like he fits that stereotype perfectly. And, and that makes me they could, just to counteract that, all you really had to do was cast a couple more black actors. You know what I mean? But it is, I mean, for me, it was sort of problematic. I thought, much as I like this guy, much as I like this performance and this character, do we need another Bagger Vance? I don't think we do.
God, no. I also like Isabella Merced, who is very good.
Yeah, she is.
And her character is not as well. I mean, it turned out to be obviously a very important.
Yeah, but small
but smaller. Yeah. But I agree. The cast was solid, especially David Johnson, and that's a fascinating character. And sort of in Bridges, like we said, how when his character changes by that reboot, which I thought was clever.
It was clever.
I did like that. It changes everything, changes the power structure, which I liked a lot. And going back to the one callback, the one that I thought would have been the last. Okay, stop right there because they held on the shoes just a little too long. She's wearing those Reeboks. Okay, get that. I thought, man, don't go any farther than this. And then, of course, they did in that one because I was almost primed for it then. I'm like, okay, that's a little, you maybe held on those shoes a bit too much. And then, of course, comes the big line. And I'm with you, Tim. I don't know how that got past all the people. Like somebody along the way had to go, come on.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, just strictly fan service. 100%.
And also, it's really the only line that actor delivers poorly. It's almost like he doesn't know. How am I supposed to say this, right? Like, this character would never say this. Is he supposed to sound like a badass? Is he supposed to sound confused by what he's saying? The delivery is terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they have to break it up in the middle of the line too, right? Like,
yeah, they do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just none of it makes any sense.
Wait, I want to talk about vaginas.
Oh, okay. Who doesn't?
Because, I feel like, in the first Alien, there is something very, with Geiger's art, obviously, there's something very phallic and vaginal in the art that he produced. And so, and then the second one, there's a big egg, and they make it very, there's always one big egg, but then the second one, there's so many big eggs, and we see the birthing of everything and everything. It's not like the series has ever kind of shied away from, but man, this movie just had vaginas aplenty. Like every time they would just like, hey, do you want to see what a face hugger looks like underneath? Bah, there it is. It's coming for you. And it was so
And then when he puts the
I know.
Yeah. Inside and thought this will take care of him. Do you think so?
Do you think so? Oh yeah, that whole scene, I'd never seen in any of the other films sort of that, whatever that was, little hive, like little egg sac that just opened for him to put his gun inside. I've never seen an image like that, like a, I don't know, cocoon, whatever that was in the other movies, and thought, is that just so that we can put a gun inside this vagina? Like, what is that here for? It was all so blatant that it became comedic to me. But I just felt like it needed to be mentioned.
Yeah, and they didn't forget the phallic either.
No, they
especially
didn't.
in that extended when they're pulling it out of
her throat.
Yeah, that goes on for quite a while. So
yeah, it really does. Although I do want to say that I thought that using the the sort of freezing the tail to get it to loosen up, that was a cool new idea on the throat choking face hugger. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, agreed.
Took my mind off the vaginas for a minute, so that was welcome.
That was an important point. I'm glad you brought that up. I can't believe that's not on the movie poster. And maybe it will be on the...
So many vaginas.
But a lot of this conversation, especially on social media, has led to people ranking it as we did among the entire universe. And I think most people, almost everybody's lists I've seen have been, Alien, Aliens 1, 2. That's hard to get
actually,
away from.
That makes me happy because there are so many times where there's a popular quote that James Cameron is a person to go to if you want the sequel to be better than the original, because so many people think that Terminator 2 is better than Terminator, which is dumb because, and plus he made Terminator, and that Aliens is better than Alien. And Aliens is like a perfect action movie. But Alien is a perfect horror movie, which makes it better. But also it came first.
Right.
So I disagree. I think Alien is better, although I do think Aliens is a masterpiece. So I was glad, as you're saying, I was glad to see people ranking it in that way.
Yeah, very much so. It's the first one is a horror movie. And after that, that's when the argument starts. I think a lot of people...
Dicey.
A lot of people, and I'm glad Daniel brought up to us, actually, when we first reviewed this on the Screening Room podcast, and we talked about how maybe we need to go back and watch Alien 3 again, because we had it a little bit farther down, and there's a lot of people that love Alien 3.
But the assembly cut.
Yes, the assembly cut, which I have not seen. And Daniel, you're telling me that my esteem will go up for it if I watch that cut.
Yeah, of course, there's a lot of religious imagery and thematics in that film, and the extended cut ramps all of that way up. I don't know if you remember the sort of crazier prisoner who initially gets blamed for the murders.
Yeah.
Okay, well, spoilers to anyone who hasn't seen the extended cut. They do that big action set piece where they're trying to trap the alien in that toxic waste cargo hold. Mm-hmm. It fails in the theatrical cut. It succeeds in the assembly cut.
Oh,
wow.
And the crazy guy who thinks the alien is this sort of religious dragon lets it back out again.
Okay.
So that's a bigger sequence.
We have seen that one.
Have we?
Yeah, we have seen that one because I remember that distinct. Because it's a powerful moment. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and they ramp up I guess a lot of Fincher's more striking visuals were cut out of the theatrical to tone it down a little bit, beyond the POV running on the walls and ceilings. It's just a more cohesive film overall.
I think, Tim, maybe it was you that I saw kind of echoed my sentiments about it, at least from first time. It was just sort of boring.
Alien 3?
Yeah.
It's just, it's a movie that got so chopped up and that was so much of a soup even trying to get to the production process that I think it was behind the 8 ball from the beginning, right? It was, even with somebody like David Fincher, who is, obviously a genius, that's a huge mountain to climb up. And I just think it was doomed from the start, right? Like, I find it an interesting movie, but it's a mess. The thing that I love about it, and it's kind of the thing that I like about the Alien series, even when they're not working, is that it's different from what came before, right? Like, Alien is a horror movie. Aliens is an action movie. Alien 3 is a weird religious prison movie. Like, I mean, it changes what it's about. And each movie does that. Alien Resurrection goes completely off into weird 90s comedy, right? Yeah. And then, Prometheus is doing whatever weird, weird pretentious thing Ridley Scott wants to say at 75 years old. But they each are their own thing. And even as much as I, find Romulus to be fun, I think the weird thing about it is it's the first time that it's not trying to do its own thing. Right?
No, it's definitely not.
It's a movie that doesn't have an interest in being its own film. It just wants to be a pastiche of the other ones. And that's why I've compared it to like The Force Awakens, right? This is Alien, The Force Awakens. And that's kind of the best way I can describe it to people. Like, it's fun. It entertains you as you watch it, but you probably won't have any desire to see it again anytime soon because it doesn't offer you something new to chew on.
Yeah, that's fair. Because I think the ones that did, that especially we haven't mentioned much yet of Resurrection, those can be very polarizing in the new sort of direction that you're going. Now, we had Resurrection very high on our, I think it was third on ours, on our list. And a lot of people don't like that at all because of just the new direction that you mentioned, the way it decided to do its own thing. And I agree with you. I respect those. Even something like Prometheus, which was very ambitious, taking on these big ideas. Yes, it seemed pretentious at times, but I did give it the respect for trying to do that. And that's one of the reasons I like it maybe a little bit more than a lot of people.
I love the cast in Prometheus is like a double-edged sword, right? Because, well, first of all, of course, Fassbender is perfection. He's so great in that, and then Covenant, which is just Covenant to me is Ridley Scott like just lifting a finger to the audience, like, oh, you didn't like it because it's not a horror movie? Well, here's a horror movie, and it's basically Friday the 13th in space. I mean, it's so. And the characters are so fucking stupid. Every single one of them, you're like, oh my God, this is the best that Earth could put together? Seriously? So that aside. But Prometheus, I felt like it wasted such great talent.
Great talent.
You know,
great cast,
and with sort of big ideas that were not well articulated. They weren't scary. They weren't exciting. They were just plotted. I felt like Prometheus just plotted. I like Resurrection a lot. I like the director Jean-Pierre Jeunet, particularly the film he made right before Resurrection, which is Delicatessen, which I absolutely love because it's weird. It's just weird and funny and dark and kind of, merciless, and then all of a sudden really quite sweet. And it's the strangest sort of concoction. And I also really love the cast in Resurrection. I thought everybody was great. I thought Winona Ryder was a little bit miscast, honestly. And that's I mean, the synthetic in any Alien movie, that's a high water mark. That's a lot to live up to. And I thought that she struggled, but I love the rest of the cast.
And speaking of water, they bring in the water sequence.
I love the water sequences. I love Sigourney Weaver. I love just badass, mean-spirited Sigourney Weaver in that movie.
Yeah.
And it's got its pocket of big fans. I think that we had as many people say, happy to see Resurrection up so high as we saw. Are you high right now? Why is Resurrection where it is?
But that's what's going to happen. Yeah, that's what's going to happen.
The problem with ranking the Alien movies, right, is I made a joke about this in my ranking when I put it up on Facebook. But you have Alien and Aliens, which are perfect films. after that, you've got a couple of movies that are like, okay, they're entertaining, but they have some issues. That's like Alien 3 and Romulus, and maybe Resurrection. And then you have movies that, like, there's people that go to bat for Prometheus, fine, but most people look at it and like, this is not a good movie. It's got some, and they just get worse and worse after that. Like Covenant is not a good movie at all. Alien versus Predator is not a good movie.
No.
Alien versus Predator Requiem is god awful.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's almost unwatchable.
Now, Daniel, I think Daniel has some love.
Really unwatchable because it's too dark, for one thing. Like,
Yeah.
you can't see what's happening in it.
You can't.
But yeah,
I know, Daniel, you've got some love for AVP Requiem, right?
Well,
You're the one?
it's couched because the first AVP, I think the film looks good. It's decently directed. I don't want to harp on the filmmaker too much because I think they were constrained by the budget and the PG-13 rating.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's automatically put in a box because of that. I put Requiem slightly above AVP because I think they're both very bad movies with terrible scripts. I won't blame the cast, but the performances aren't very good in either of them. But at the end of the day, once you scrape everything else away, if you're not going to give me a good script with good ideas, if you're not going to give me characters that I give a shit about, at least give me cool creatures. And I think the creature effects work in the first Alien versus Predator is really wonky, whereas they nailed the creature effects work in Requiem, even though they're running around small town America, which just seems weird.
Mm-hmm.
That's just out of place, even for the Predator. It didn't work in that, and it didn't work in the movie The Predator. But the creatures look the way they're supposed to in the second one, so I give it a slight edge above the first one for that. But those are the bottom of the rankings. No
Yeah,
matter
so
what.
it's not love he has for it, it's pity.
Yeah.
That's what
And
we
the
just
darkness doesn't help
No.
either.
No.
what makes me the most upset about it is they have wonderful frameworks to do Aliens versus Predator stories, right? They had comic books that Dark Horse put out in the 90s that were really, really good. Like, people enjoyed the heck out of them still. They could have taken those and built off of them, but they didn't. They just went their own way. And at the same time, they keep screwing with the backstory of both movies now. And like you said, like, it doesn't work in a small town because it doesn't fit the aliens, like, history, and it doesn't fit the Predator's MO.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're just not good movies.
No.
So where does it go from here? I mean, Daniel, you have all the scuttlebutt on the studios. Have they already greenlit the next one, or what's happening?
I would assume they're already talking about it because it is making money.
Yeah.
It's doing better than Covenant did, and it'll probably end up doing better than Prometheus in the long run, and it costs less, which is also a plus in their favor. The immediate next Alien thing we get will be that event series next year on FX that the guy who does the Fargo show has been doing. Is doing. Who knows how that'll turn out? But beyond that, I'm sure we'll get another movie in a few years. I have there's a direction that I would love for them to go, especially given how surprisingly heavy they went on the Prometheus and Covenant elements. I don't know if they'll do that or not, but I would love to see them bring David back in as a villain. Pit him against Rain and Andy and whoever else.
And if not that, Alien the Vagina Monologues.
Let me ask you this, Daniel. Did you feel like you cared enough about Rain and Andy that you wanted to keep seeing more of them?
I think it would be interesting to continue with them. I don't think it's a requirement. If they want to go in a completely other different direction with another one, they can, and then we can just assume they went off to that system and lived happily ever after. Granted, happily ever after is not really the Alien franchise's MO.
No.
but
no. As soon as you're so happy that they made it out and that Newt is okay, then they land on some fucking planet that's a prison and you go, oh no, they're dead in the starship. What?
No.
They're just dead? What? Next thing you tell me, Sigourney Weaver's just going to jump into a vat of boiling oil. Oh, wait, what? So the point of Alien 3 is that she should have just killed herself in Alien. That's the point of Alien 3.
Yeah, I'm just assuming that we'll continue with them just because it's a hit.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
However anyone feels about the Prometheus and Covenant films, Fassbender is far and away the best part about them, and that
Oh, yeah.
arc is wide open. Given the elements that they included here, I would love to see him roped back in. I would probably like that more than an actual Prometheus 3, which was planned at one point, but Covenant didn't do well enough to pull that
Thank
off.
God.
Before we got this movie, my big fan idea would have been to pit David against Ripley, because then it's Space Satan versus Space Jesus, since she was resurrected.
Wow, that's a good subtitle.
That is-
But I doubt they would do that at this point, so I will settle for it happening in a Romulus sequel.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. I mean, anything that's making them money, they're not gonna stop.
No.
I mean, that's not their MO for sure. So we will see. But in the end, I think, Tim, you nailed it. It's fun.
Yeah.
It is fun.
It's big dumb fun.
Yeah, I had a blast with it.
Yeah.
I really did. We'll see where
It's
it
big
goes.
dumb fun where a lot of people die.
Yes.
So that's the best kind
Yeah.
to me of big dumb fun.
Lots and lots. Well, guys, we appreciate this as always. And Daniel, I know as we remind everybody every week on the Screening Room podcast, we can find you at the Schlocketeer on socials. What else you got going on? Is that about it? I mean, you're checking out the movies all the time.
Yeah, that's about it for now.
And Tim, I know you're Crazy Little Monster Productions, correct?
Correct. Yeah. If you look up on YouTube, Crazy Little Monster, just search for that, and my channel will come up. Or you can find me Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Hit me a message, and I'll send you a link. And you can see a lot of movies where people die.
Yes, you should. If you are not already subscribing to Tim's YouTube channel, do it right now.
Yeah.
He posts a ton of short films. Every single one of them is just a delight. I mean, if you like death, as I do, is a delight. They're so much fun and they're so smart. I'm a huge fan of this channel.
And what's cool is some of them are very short.
Really short,
but
yes.
pack a punch. And
They
that's,
do.
yeah.
They absolutely
Yeah.
do.
Very
Yeah.
short films.
Yeah.
And we're going to see you both in October right here in Columbus for Nightmares Film Festival.
I'll be there.
Absolutely.
All right, cannot wait.
Yes, very
if you're
excited.
anywhere in the area, do not miss it. Nightmares Film Festival is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're a horror fan, you got to be there, not only for the films, but for the community.
Yeah.
It's just a great time at Gateway Film Center in October. Look that up. All right, well, guys, we thank you so much. This is fun.
Yeah. You want to talk about in the next podcast?
Next podcast
Yeah.
is going, speaking of Gateway Film Center,
That's right.
we're going to be live for Fright Club Live.
That's right. And we're going to show this year's classic, Oni Baba, which I'm really excited to see on a big screen. Actually, I've seen it on a big screen before. It's a gorgeous, just beautiful, super weird movie. Our topic is going to be Down in the Pit, and I'm excited about that as well. And one of the things I wanted to say, we just got a chance to finish the new Shudder series that's going to drop this week called Horror's Greatest. And they do a whole episode on, and it's a really great show. It's about, each episode is an hour long. I've liked their sort of documentary, sort of talking head, let's talk about horror movie series that they've put out so far. I've liked them all. But they've all been a little bit, I've not had to take notes.
Right.
Like, they don't tell me anything I don't already know. They
Yeah.
never have. This one kind of does. There's a lot that they cover in great depth. They give it an hour to each one. So that was really fun. The J-Horror episode is my favorite of them all. It was really, really good episode. And they talk a lot about Oni Baba. So that was exciting for me to see.
And inside, I got a kick out of it because inside one of them, they had a full little subheading about the genius of Clint Howard.
That's right. That's right, they did.
All right, Clint
and
Howard.
And the J-Horror one does a lot about Takashi Miike, so I was happy
yes,
about that.
yes.
So, but no, it's a great show. So if you get a chance, check it out. I think it drops like midweek.
All right, so we'll be showing that at Gateway. We'll be recording a podcast on Down in the Pit
Down in
and
the
having
Pit,
our
Down in
Fright
the
Club
Pit.
fun as always. So I hope you can make it. Until then, Daniel Baldwin, Timothy Troy, thank you guys so much. And until next time, she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And they are Daniel and Tim. And this is the Fright Club podcast.
Stay
Stay frightful,
Stay
my
frightful,
friends.
friends.
Yay!
Should have had us all say, get away from her, you bitch.